here we are. It's Let's Talk, which is a listener call-in community forum. That's what.
Very nice.
Let's call it that. Getting to the root causes of issues that affect everyone. This forum believes your voice matters, and we welcome all thoughts and views without judgment. So please call 415-663-8492 or 8317. When you do call in, and you know you will because, it's just what you have to do. It's the law. When you call in, you'll hear a noise as they put you in the system, and then just hang on until you hear me say, "You are on the air," and give us a first name. Turn your radio down or whatever you're listening to, and please, most importantly of all, watch your language. Keep it clean. It's live radio.
What's the topic today, Paul?
Well, we had a lovely light topic last week.
Are you going to introduce us, or are we just going to be voices in the dark?
It was a lovely parties was the topic last week, which elicited a lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
So we know what people like. That's why this week we're doing gun violence.
Oh, got to balance it out. Keep the balance.
The number one topic on Facebook.
And in the studio today, of course, Shelley Rugg.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Stephen Hurwitz.
Hello there.
And I'm Paul Raffel. And please do call in if you have views about this, and how could we not? It's just an awful thing, isn't it? So what do we do about it? Who's doing it? What do we do about it? Gun control? Do we want gun control?
I would love someone to call in who believes that if we have regulations, that somehow it infringes upon their rights to be able to buy whatever they want at the gun store. That's a perspective that I personally have trouble understanding, because I don't... Like, I saw a post on Facebook, for example. It was an old guy holding a sign, and it said, I've been a hunter for this many years and a Republican for this many years, and never in my life have I killed 17 deer at once. And so the point being that we don't need assault rifles. Those are for military, right? It's not something that the average citizen should really have.
There used to be an assault rifle ban.
They did.
And Trump claims that it wasn't renewed under the Obama administration. I have a feeling that he's lying. It would be nice to know. Or he tried, and the Republican Congress probably wouldn't let it.
Yeah.
And so there was a ban, and that to me seems like the low-hanging fruit. It'd be so easy just to start with.
Okay, so what would you ban?
Well, and the other argument that people come up with is, oh, great, ban, keep us from getting the weapons, but the bad guys will still do it, But the thing is that it's not just the bad guys. The people who did the recent shootings legally walked into a store and bought guns.
Right.
They weren't, black market weapons.
Right.
So,
I know.
And they interviewed the guy.
It's a 100 magazine round. I think it's legal.
Not in California.
You're
limited to 15, so you can only kill 15 people at a time.
Right.
Wow, that's great.
They interviewed the guy who sold the gun to the El Paso murderer, and he said how sorry he was. He said he was just shocked that his gun was used for such a heinous crime. I thought, my God, you're sending those out into the...
Well, yeah, what do you think people are going to do with those guns?
Well, and here's
target
the thing.
Practice?
How many guns are there? Apparently there's enough for everyone in the U.S. to have a gun. So there's like 300 million guns out there.
It's a huge, big business, and it also is probably a big part of why we have such a gigantic military budget.
Right. Well,
sales of weapons.
So here's part of the thing that's encouraging is that the statistic that is pretty amazing is that 3% of the population, that's like 7.7 million people, have over half of the guns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same people are buying all the guns.
Startling
yeah, well, they're stockpiling every time there's one of these shootings, and people start talking about gun control, they go out and buy another AR-15 and as much ammo as they can carry. So you end up with stockpile. You have the average of that 3% is 17 firearms per person.
Wow.
And one of them, the people who did the study, it was Johns Hopkins. Somebody interviewed this guy who lived in the Midwest somewhere, and he had two handguns, and he'd never used them, But then I think it was Sandy Hook, so this is back in 2013, early 2013. He decided to, it sounded like they were going to ban semi-automatics, so he went and got an AR-15. And then he got another, and then he went and got a shotgun because he liked to hunt, and then he ended up with 17 guns.
Wow.
It doesn't take long once they start adding up, especially if they're inherited from your father. Your father had his favorite 30-30 or whatever, and you inherit it. And
I remember growing up as a kid, my grandfather, who was a judge in Long Beach, he had a gun collection that was framed in the living room, and it was, to me, it was an odd thing, but my parents weren't. Well, actually, my dad was into guns a little bit, I have to say.
I think that one of the most serious things that isn't discussed enough is that having all the guns around. They're crimes of opportunity. It's a shooting of opportunity. People don't necessarily go out, I don't own all those guns and I just decide I'm going to go out and use them. If the guns are around, something that might just be an argument, an altercation, the gun changes the dynamics dramatically.
Right.
Well,
that's why there's, so many killings in the home. Often accidental.
I had that statistic somewhere. I think it's 32. Sorry, talk among yourselves. Women in the U.S. are 21 times more likely to die by guns than women in other high-income countries, with an average of 52 women per month being shot to death by an intimate partner. Wow.
Since you mentioned women, gun ownership by women is on the rise. Yeah. So maybe they've decided they're going to defend themselves against these guys.
It's so crazy, really, the fear-mongering that causes us to then stockpile the weapons. And so we're sitting on a pile of weapons afraid that something terrible is going to happen, which ultimately will probably be caused by us because we are sitting on so many guns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got an email from Mark Dowie, as I sometimes do. Thank you, Mark, who is a gun owner. He has guns. He rarely uses them, apparently, but he's from Montana, so he had a hunting rifle, .308 Winchester, fires one round at a time, and,
got a cock
bolt action, I'm guessing. And he's also got a .357 Magnum, the most powerful gun.
I know that'll stop you.
And that's about when he was riding fences in Montana and grizzly bear country. So he never uses them. He's got them stored somewhere, not at home, by the way. So don't go looking for them. And he is certainly a gun owner who is for sensible gun control. It's semi-automatics. A hunter who's worth his salt can, with a bolt-action rifle, you don't have to fire as fast as you can move your finger. So if you're really using these things for hunting, and they're not built for hunting, AR-15s are short-barreled. They just put out loads of metal.
Especially if you have 100 a magazine that holds 100 bullets.
Yeah.
I think the low-hanging fruit, though, is you're not going to get gun control in this country, but I think that if you got rid of AR-15s, I think you can get consensus on that. And I think that if we had requirements at least as easy as getting a driver's license, where you had a gun safety measure that you had to pass, showing that you knew how to operate the gun safely, etc., and to get a license. Right now, 14-year-old can't buy cigarettes, but they can go in and buy a gun. It's that easy.
14?
Yeah.
Wow. I have a friend who posted something on Facebook, and he says it's too late. There's too many guns to ban any of them. They can manufacture. These guys are manufacturing AR-15s and converting all kinds of, putting all kinds of conversions on them to turn them into like bump stocks, which are illegal now, but
they're 3D
they're still
printing
out there.
them. They're 3D printing guns.
Yeah.
Undetectable going through a X-ray machine.
Yeah. So what's the?
I guess we need to work on our fear, right?
Yes.
We need to heal our fear. We need to stop being so afraid of the other all the time.
Mm.
And
well, certainly this is what all the coverage has been about, is what our president tweets out every so often, his arguably racist views.
You're right.
Stoking that anger and fear and all that fear of the foreigners coming in.
Shelley, I think you're right on when you talk about the fear, because I think that the gun violence and the ownership is really a symptom. It's not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. And what kind of a society do we have where people are that afraid or somehow bought the rationale that a weapon is a positive addition to their existence rather than a negative?
Mm-hmm. Guns are part of the problem. This is the Havoc Journal, which is about it's for veterans. He doesn't know what the answer is. You don't try and just cram it into a single, easily categorized box that fits your particular political view. The answer is not to dismiss those with differing viewpoints out of hand as racists, idiots, low-information voters, gun nuts, hippies, race baiters, or liberal hippies, although those labels might fit certain people. The answer is not to ignore studies, evidence, or information that does not support your point of view, nor is the answer to cherry-pick information that supports your point of view to the exclusion of all others. So, anyway, I don't know what he finally comes to.
Thank you, Paul.
But it's an interesting thing. Constitutional scholars, mental health professionals, gun rights advocates, civil rights leaders, and law enforcement leaders all want to come together and solve the problem, and as long as this political division is going on, there won't be any common ground. Thankfully, the NRA is apparently losing membership, so they are getting less and less powerful.
They have scandalous behavior now.
Yeah,
but it seems to me that law enforcement is or should be probably one of the leading proponents of getting these guns off the street. Years ago, I can't remember when, I was stopped for something, and the officer very cautiously approached the car, undid the little safety thing on his holster, and he had no... And
gosh, I can't help but wonder what you were doing, Stephen, that he was so scared to approach your car.
Probably needed my tire was probably needed changing or something.
Basic training.
And and if you notice 101, they all have a backup almost immediately. He doesn't know what he's going to run into with all those guns.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, law enforcement doesn't want all these guns out there either. They'd prefer to be the only ones with the guns, which, of course, is what many of these gun collectors are worried about.
Yeah, it might not be about the other unless the other is our political leadership. That there may be a point where people are saying, oh, no, you're not going to make me do X, Y, Z, and, civil war.
Yeah.
Eesh.
Yeah. Well, now, so to that point, I was alarmed by this. In fact, it's one of the reasons we're doing this, is that in Europe especially, but here as well, the neo-Nazi sympathizers and white supremacists are going to Ukraine to fight on one side or the other. They don't really care. They're fighting Russian forces, Russian-backed forces, and it's kind of a civil war. It's really between Russia and Ukraine. And they're getting military training there and coming back to Europe. And they're not really being tracked like jihadists. We're all worried about jihadists. No. Who does most of these mass killings? It's historically, apart
White
from
males.
9/11, it's white European heritage males who are afraid of something, obviously, or they just have a chip. Anyway, now they're getting full-on war training. Many of them are training to be snipers, and they're coming back to Europe. And there are several people in Europe who are rather concerned about this.
I can't
prospect.
imagine why. That's a whole good subject in itself, though, is white supremacy.
Yeah, well, I think we can tie that in with this.
Yeah.
I think it's part of it. Here's a guy who is a gun owner. He's but he thinks there are two gun violence laws he would support. Background checks on private sales could be very effective. If you sell your gun to somebody who you know beats his wife, and that guy shoots his wife, you should go to jail because you are providing the weapon for that shooting.
Well, that's
and background checks. Anyway, he wants them to do that. Addressing the stolen guns issue would be effective too. A lot of the guns, according to this guy lives in New Mexico, so Albuquerque. A lot of the guns used in crimes there are stolen. When you have a lot of guns around, as we do, and they're not stored properly, they're a target-rich environment for theft. So, I guess there have been 2 big break-ins into gun stores, and people break into people's houses just to get the gun. Hi, caller, you are on the air. What's your name, please?
Sally.
Oh, Sally.
Hi, Sally.
Sally. Yes, hello.
Hi.
I think this is a super multi-layered problem. I think there's a lot of organizational weird... Sorry, I was distracted by the deer in my yard.
Oh,
nice.
Get the gun, Mother.
Damn, I missed the shot. I feel like on one level you probably have all kinds of weird groups arming themselves. I mean, I think given what's going on, you can't really rule anything out. I don't mean to sound paranoid, but gee whiz. But with individuals, because it's we have the lone gunman is as time-worn as, the self-reliant, cowboy. I mean, we've got a lot of lone gunmen out there, and they are all mostly young white males,
yep.
as you were saying, and I think they are they are vastly. I mean, this is dime store stuff here that I'm spewing, but they're really insecure, pathologically insecure, and angry and disempowered. And I think a lot of people, even people who are maybe more mature and very well, better integrated in their lives or into society or whatever, they still feel disempowered on some level, and they get guns. And I think that a gun is just like, the Beatles. Happiness is a warm gun. I mean, it really is like for a lot of people, I feel so safe with it. And it really just tucks so nicely in with the American mythology of the self-reliant cowboy.
Yeah.
And then that's one part of society. That doesn't cover everybody. Then you've got the people reacting who are like, I need a gun to protect myself from the crazies with guns.
Right.
Yeah.
And people of minority, for lack of a better word, minorities, people of different races and creeds who are buying guns out of because they're terrified,
Right.
or for whatever other reasons, and
we couldn't blame. We couldn't blame, for example, Latinos in southern Texas if they wanted to get a gun now.
If they can be. I mean, blaming the victim is also a weird coping mechanism that happens to people when these murders happen. If it's a murder of a few people or many people, I can't believe I'm even saying that phrase.
One of the rationales that have come up about in Texas with these killings has been for people to have a lot of guns because a good guy with a gun, somehow somebody is going to be armed and he's going to see something bad happen. He's going to
save the day.
He's going to save the day.
Mythology.
But
once in a blue moon, okay, the cops were there at that shooting.
Yeah, somebody said, well, they did have a good guy. I said, wait a minute, that guy was a police officer.
Yeah, but that's part of the American mythology, the great Western hero.
I can't help but think...
This thing is... The thing that layers on top of this is that when you have victims, then you've got these... I'm going to not say bad words right now, but I want to colorfully and disparagingly describe people who say this is fake. This didn't really happen.
Oh.
Okay, but then even with, let's talk about, just for a sec, and this was a famous murder, and I think today is the 50th anniversary of Sharon Tate and her friends in her house, and they were shot and also stabbed and butchered. Now, I remember that Roman Polanski was kind of blamed. He was victimized. There's a really perverse psychological ploy that people don't even understand that they're playing out, whereby they're desperate to figure out why this is happening. So they end up blaming the victim or the closest relative of the victim or victims.
Yeah.
And it really happened to him because I watched some video of the press conference, and he was really being put upon. He was being treated in the opposite way in which he should have been treated at the time. He had just lost his wife and unborn child. Yeah. So if you can pull that on this person and not pony up the compassion, imagine, it's almost like the more massive the tragedy, the more this kind of reaction comes out among a certain group of people. And that is not helpful.
Right.
It's weird. I don't understand it. I think it's some crazy pants coping mechanism. Or it's just pure evil. It could be a little bit of both.
I think coping is probably a big part of it. When we don't have good coping skills to deal with stuff that comes at us in life, we might turn to simple solutions like becoming an alcoholic so we don't feel, or getting a gun and killing people so we feel powerful.
It's interesting that not all of them, but many of them, when the guy's going off to the high school to shoot kids, first person he kills is his mother or father. Recently, the killer, his sister was there?
Yeah.
There's this family thing going on. It's like, okay, if I'm going out, I'm taking mom with me. Something like that.
These are usually the younger boys, white boys, who've had this upbringing. Maybe they've been mistreated. Maybe they've
not just young boys. No, dads. I'm going to kill my wife and my children.
Oh yeah. Well, that happens all the time
for good measure. Because I have to. Everyone's going.
Right.
But getting away from the crazy people and just this business of the mythology around owning a gun. Again, I want to go back to this idea of the good guy with the gun, because I heard that over and over when they were talking about this
El
Paso
Paso
thing.
They were trying to arm teachers.
But that's that
they are.
cool Wayne LaPierre spewing that.
Yeah.
But it turns out, though, that this good guy with the gun, he's the jury, the judge, and the executioner. I'm the good guy with the gun. I have to decide who it is I'm going to shoot. So, and it's all happening within about 35 seconds.
Right.
And
you have to be the perfect shot and not kill anybody else. Right.
No, and then he says, my work here is done, and rides to the next town.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. As
I think that was a quarter, actually.
High Plains Drifter.
Free as it was. Thanks for
calling,
Thank
Sally.
you, Sally. That was
Always
very good.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Yeah,
the number is 415-663-8492. Give us a call. Give us your views about gun violence, gun control, what we can do to non-violent communication. We can't say combat it because that's a war word. So what can we do to, can't say fight it. What do we do to ameliorate?
Ameliorate, that's lovely.
I guess.
There you go.
What you were saying? What were you saying?
Good guy with a gun?
Good guy with a gun. I just want everyone to know on Facebook.
Okay.
There's this brilliant little video done by College Humor or somebody. I don't know who it is, but it's about the good guy with a gun walking into a coffee shop and everyone's armed and they're all drawing on each other. The guy behind the counter's got one.
Everybody's got a gun. Yeah.
Everyone's got a gun except the black guy in the corner, and he's the one who gets taken away by the cop. Anyway, I thought I was a good guy.
Oh, boy.
No, I'm the good guy.
There's somebody, speaking of that, somebody posted this open carry experiment. You have both of them. You had a black guy carrying an AR-15, and you had the white guy.
Yep.
And the cops comes to the white guy, and he was pretty rough. He questioned him, and the guy said, "Well, it's open carry," and you know. And the cop says, "Okay," and he walks away. The black guy, they throw him to the ground.
Yeah, 4 police cars come.
They've got him thrown to the ground. He's going, "Hey, I'm allowed to have this."
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That's a scary thing. Every day, 100
Welcome
Americans,
to America.
100 Americans are killed with guns, and hundreds more are shot and injured.
8 of them are children.
Yeah, that's right.
My.
Every day. Average deaths per year. When was this? This was this year. So April this year. Average deaths per year: 36,383 from mostly, majority, 2/3 almost, suicide.
Ooh.
Again, act of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got the gun. It's easy.
And interviewing people who have attempted suicide and failed, they found in most cases they were glad that they failed. Mm-hmm. Whereas a gun is...
if you do it right, you're
done.
not going to fail.
You don't get a second chance.
I did meet someone once who... it's kind of gory. But he had tried to do the thing with the gun in the mouth, and he missed, basically. He missed his brain and his spinal cord. It went out the back of his neck, didn't hit anything on the way.
Ouch.
Yeah. But he survived, and he's still around.
Okay. All right.
Gun injuries. 100,120 average injuries per year.
Interesting, because we don't think about that.
18,362 unintentional, which I guess includes young kids picking up mom's gun in the back seat of the SUV and firing through the back of the seat. Is that unintentional? I think not. I think that 3-year-old knew exactly what he was doing. Oh, excuse me. Caller, on the air. What's your name, please?
It's MK.
MK!
Happy whatever day it is, Thursday.
It's Gun Violence Day.
It's Let's Talk Day.
I was a little child a long time ago.
Oh.
We had guns to play with. We had holsters to play with. We
Absolutely.
had caps. We had wonderful smell of caps.
Of gunpowder. Yeah.
Yeah. And
squirt guns.
We played. I had a double-barreled shotgun that actually shot stuff. And
BB guns?
I never had a BB gun, no, or a pellet gun.
Which is one step up.
And we played, and none of us grew up to go out and shoot anybody. But it was a very much a different time for sure, with the stuff that was on TV being like Roy Rogers and the Lone Ranger and Hopalong Cassidy and those guys who were pretty mild and very white. And
I had a Roy Rogers pistol and holster. Cat gun.
Did you?
Yeah.
I had a wonderful 6-shooter that was, when you shot it, the barrel went around. It was a toy, and I never remember my parents having any problem with it at all. My dad's rifle was sitting in their bedroom closet, in their coat closet, in their clothes closet in their bedroom, and she brought that out to shoot at tin cans every once in a while, and a hedgehog who was, running amok in the garden or whatever. And I'm just wondering, with today's children, and with this particular administration that we have now, giving really permission to anybody do have really bad behavior and it goes unpunished. What example is that for, what can come next? I think that's one of the most frightening things that's going on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean,
it does. That's a very good, interesting. Yeah.
Well, and are we, our parents, our teachers, our people who are around children, are they doing enough to help children cope with, for example, bullying? A lot of these guys are nerdy kids who got bullied a lot or got a broken heart, and they go and kill their ex-sweetheart. How to cope with life.
Right.
They're not being taught how to cope with life.
Well, their parents didn't know either.
Yeah.
If you get a certificate of participation for everything that you do, it does. Well, seriously, it doesn't give you any. There's nothing to aspire to, really.
But I think we do have a problem in America. Well, probably all over. Human beings have a problem understanding how to deal with their emotions, and if you don't have good coping skills, then you do, harmful things either to yourself or others.
I don't think people are different around the world, though. I think that the proximity to weapons changes the dynamic. You have just as many nerdy kids in Japan, maybe, that are bullied by their schoolmates. They just don't have that gun and that gun culture.
They have violent video games, which everyone always blames, and apparently there is no correlation with.
I think there must be, because I've watched some of the stuff that my grandson's doing, and it's those video games that's all killing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, apparently they've done whoever they are, done studies and haven't found a correlation. But it makes sense to me that if you've got these super realistic graphics now, and
I don't know. I think it's about desensitizing people myself.
Yeah.
It becomes normal. And we lose our gut reaction to the horrific nature of it.
Yeah. Well,
it's so commonplace. But the thing that is worrying me is this horrible behavior on the part of the president and his cronies that is completely going unpunished and really unquestioned. But that's really.
Some people embrace it, though. Probably some people in this very community embrace it. And so I think that's the thing we need to heal is, that unknown factor with the other. How can we come together and recognize what we actually have in common as human beings, that we all struggle and we all have successes.
Yes, and we also, Shelley, have to get our faces out of our phones and our iPads so that we can learn how to communicate with others.
Right, make real connections.
And I don't see, I don't quite understand this is a major internet failure, and they just aren't available, which I guess is possible. Then people are going to have to, figure out how to communicate.
I think a good start, though, in terms of a consensus building on this thing is to not lump all gun owners into the same category.
Sure.
And you can make gun owners your ally as well as your enemy. And I think if we started, like Paul said, I'm a gun owner and I support this. If we started rallying those people to join, they have a lot of credibility in the discussion. I mean, guns are a rite of passage, this hunting thing, and you just can't start calling hunters and they're they shoot ducks, but you cannot put them in the same category as the guy who owns 11 weapons.
Right. There was a guy arrested recently, I believe it was in Southern California. Somehow they found out that he intended to go out and shoot every woman he saw because no one would have sex with him. Mm-hmm. And I know we talked about this in the past. It's still happening. So, yeah.
Yeah, with illegal guns.
My dad, he at one time he rode his bike quite a bit, and he would sometimes go along the flood control. They had bike trails. But there were people who were mugging people for their bikes. Right. On the bike trails, and so he actually had a gun in his backpack.
Wow.
as if he could suddenly whip the backpack off, unzip it, grab the gun,
Yeah.
But that's what he did. It made him feel better. But then flash forward when he was starting to have dementia, right where he lived, there was a preschool just 2 houses down the alley, and there was a barking dog next door. And I found out that one day he actually had gone outside and shot his gun. And I said, oh, no, where did you shoot the gun? He said, into the ground. But the reality, I looked up the laws, and you can't do that. You're not allowed. No, yeah. And I immediately knew I had to remove the gun from the house at that point. Yeah. And so he went and got a BB gun. So he'd shoot cats and things with the BB gun. That was not nice.
Oh, God, you got to love them. Okay, well, I'll get off.
Thank you, MK.
Have a lovely day.
But,
thank you so much.
Day.
Bye, MK. But, yeah, that's something that maybe we don't always think about, is that the gun owner could change.
Yes.
Sure. And this is, by the way, Let's Talk. And this is also KWMR Marin, West Marin Community Radio. That's right. 90.5 FM Point Reyes Station, 89.9 Bolinas, 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley, and KWMR is supported by our wonderful listener members and by Marin Agricultural Land Trust, a member-supported non-profit organization working to preserve Marin County farmland. On the web at malt.org. That's MALT.org.
May I add the word 415-663-8492 if you want to join the conversation?
And there are lots of people listening online. Come on now, people. Give us a call.
Gail, are you out there? She's in New York.
Access to a gun increases the risk of death by suicide by 3 times. Gun suicides are concentrated in states with high rates of gun ownership.
Okay.
Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless they use a gun. Less than, across all suicide attempts not involving a firearm, less than 5% will result in death. Wow. That's a lot of botched suicide attempts, I say. But for gun suicides, those statistics are flipped. Approximately 85% of gun suicide attempts end in death.
A lot of people attempt suicide that don't really want to die, which is one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Women use pills, and they don't like to be disfigured, whereas men, they don't just blow it away. They don't care.
Oh, dear.
1/3 of gun deaths are homicides. Oh, that's interesting. And the U.S. gun homicide rate is 25 times that of other high-income countries. Gun homicides are concentrated in cities. Half of all gun homicides took place in just 127 cities, which represented nearly a quarter of the U.S. population. Don't know what that.
Yeah, I still want to have a better understanding of why gun owners can be so reactive, so strongly reactive in opposition to any kind of regulations.
Well,
how is that infringing on their rights?
Many of them are collectors, and there is this belief, and if you believe this, please give us a call and talk to us about it, that the Second Amendment allows you as a
well-regulated militia. Yeah, they're all part of a militia. I hope they're not, frankly.
That you can actually have anything you want, except that you're not supposed to have fully automatic weapons, although there are plenty of those out there.
I think the NRA popularizes that notion, but I don't think that's real. I think that haven't they just discovered that most people want sensible, reasonable gun control?
I know. I think about.
I think that's why they're losing membership,
because
they've become so radical in that way.
Like you were saying earlier, a car is considered a killing weapon. I mean, you can kill people with a car, and so you have to. You have to. Learn how to drive the car. You have to take a test. You have to take a written test and behind the wheel. And everybody does that.
Can't be inebriated.
Right. There's rules, right, for driving around among other people.
I wonder how much of that is alcohol related. Alcohol is probably one of the most commonly used dangerous drug. And I just wonder how much of the gun death has to do alcohol in there.
That would be a good correlation to look at.
Let's see. Children and teens. I couldn't believe this statistic. The second leading cause of death for American children and teens is firearms. The second leading cause. Top one is motor vehicles.
That's another thing you could do in terms of gun control is make it a law that people need gun safes. They need to be able to safely store their weapons. Those deaths of children are happening. I'll tell you a story. When I was younger, I think I was a teenager, and a friend of ours bought a pistol. Mm-hmm. And we were sitting up in his bedroom. He pulls his pistol and he starts waving it around. Yeah. And it was like shocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Well, that's what happened.
What are you doing with that thing?
Yeah. Start playing with it.
A loaded gun.
It was loaded?
It was loaded.
Oh, man.
Yikes. Anyway, this is Let's Talk. We're talking about gun violence in the USA. Give us a call, 415-663-8492. Give us a solution.
Yeah, really. Please.
What are the solutions? There's not just one, obviously. What are the solutions that we can start lowering the numbers of homicide and gun deaths every year? Just unbelievable numbers.
I think it comes back to coping, learning how to better communicate as human beings.
Here's a statistic.
Firearms.
Use your words, people.
Firearms are the first leading cause of death for black children and teens.
Oh.
Wow. I was reading your statistics as well. We rank with Yemen in terms of gun ownership and the number of Yemen, which is in the middle of a war, by the way. Let's
say a lawless country. Yeah, it's not a statistic to be proud of, all this. Red flag laws. That's where if you have mental problems, if they have people who pose a threat to themselves or others, obviously they do, these guys who are doing this, but how do you know that beforehand? So Trump has actually said on the Monday after the weekend of shootings, he voiced support for red flag legislation that would allow law enforcement authorities to take firearms out of hands of people who pose a threat to themselves or others. Formerly known as Extreme Risk Protection Order laws, grant family members, that's an impressive one, family members, law enforcement officials, and in some cases other individuals, the ability to petition a judge to temporarily remove firearms from people believed to pose a danger to themselves or others. 17 states and D.C. have enacted versions of these laws which vary widely in terms of who can use them. In New York State, school administrators can file petitions. Yeah. Wow. Interesting, because after all these things, there's always someone who comes up, well, yeah, this was a weird, violent guy. He was kicking his dog around. And
not surprised that happened, right?
The girlfriend of the Dayton shooter, I think it was. I'd say shooter. I shouldn't say shooter. Murderer. Alleged murderer. Said, that on their first date, he showed her videos of a school shooting.
Animal torture is a big tell.
They dated for like 2 months, and then she called it off, and she wasn't surprised. She didn't think it would ever come to this, but she wasn't surprised that he'd done it.
Wow.
Oof. In Miami in February, a 29-year-old man had his firearms confiscated when his mother alerted local authorities about his behavior.
Yeah.
He told his mother that he thought the guy at Parkland that did the Parkland massacre did a good job, and he also allegedly threatened his mother and posted pictures of himself holding 2 assault rifles and bragging about how he was never convicted of a felony.
But he was planning on it.
Well, apparently. That was the fear, so they took his guns away. If you're a gunner, give us a call. Would you be Would you be up with that? I mean, what if there are warning signs? Can we not take guns away from
and if you're
killing tools away from
that
somebody?
person who people are, concerned about, that person, that individual may not be self-aware, so they're probably going to be very angry about it. So that's kind of scary.
Yeah. And they're armed.
Yeah.
And you posted online on Facebook a post about when Trump repealed the law that was an Obama law about mentally disturbed people not being allowed to get guns if they have a history of mental illness. And that was one of the first things that Trump did when he came to office.
And why is that, do you think?
It was an Obama law.
I think it's. I think
and the NRA was.
Yeah, I think that
very powerful. Then.
I think they own the current.
2 years later, not so much.
They own the current Tea Party administration.
Mm-hmm.
They've bought and paid for them, and if you don't have a high NRA rating, and when you're running for office in these states, they make and break politicians with their NRA rating.
Yeah. But that's not.
Let's hope that's changing.
Even the NRA has reluctantly voiced its support for red flag laws. Although, like Lindsey Graham voiced support for it too. Like Graham and Trump, the gun rights group has emphasized the importance of due process protections for firearms owners at risk of losing their weapons. So it would be, you wouldn't just be able to go in and take the guns away. You'd have to have due process. You'd have to be, I don't know. You'd have to take him to court, and who's going to do that? Okay,
especially an abusive husband, you're going to take him to court.
Gun control groups are in favor as well. The Giffords, the Brady campaign, all back the measures. So there's actually some support for this, and I think I saw a headline that the NRA is not happy about that. Well, I say,
it's about time.
Poop.
They emerged. The NRA was not always the NRA that we know today.
No, exactly.
I can't remember, but it isn't that long ago that they emerged as this advocates of extreme gun ownership.
It was during Obama. Well, it was before that. Yeah. No, it was Charlton Heston from My Cold Dead Hand.
They also have a television program apparently that's come under some very right wing. I can't remember her name. She's like the chief person on it, but some heavy duty political stuff coming out of there.
Yeah. No, they're whipping up people and, making no bones about the fact that there's only one way to deal with people who want to take away your guns, and that is to put out a post with a target on it, as they did with some woman politician, of course. Yes. Anyway, this is Let's Talk. We have about 8 minutes to go, so give us a call, 415-663-8492, talking about gun violence. And I did download a full database that Mother Jones put together on mass shooting, only on mass shootings. Yeah.
Math is what, 4 or more?
It is, I think it's 3 killed, not including the person who's doing the shooting.
We just had one. It was just a little addendum. Someone stabbed 4 people.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Committing robberies.
Just a little offhand thing, I think.
Yeah, killing people. Well, knives kill. Yeah. So the NRA would say, well, are we going to take knives away from everybody? Well, I don't know. Should we? Certainly take them away from people who are going to do stuff like that. Again, red flag laws would come into play. I'm sure he's had has a history of some kind that you don't allow him to carry a machete around in town.
Oh, boy.
But then, who's going to ban machetes? Nobody. Okay, but that is one of the rationales, right? Guns are just a tool. So is a knife.
Right.
So
guns,
is a fork.
People
a club.
People kill. Guns don't kill people.
Right.
But it's just too easy to kill with a gun, and
That's right.
especially accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the police being right there. Have you seen the video of him getting... He was right outside where everyone... He started shooting in Dayton with his sister and her boyfriend, I think. And then he was just walking down the street and everyone was outside. It was after midnight and everyone was out just enjoying the heat outside and just chatting away. And he starts coming down the street and they all run back into the club. And he...
Followed him. You
see him on the video, and he's running around the railing outside. He is right at the door with his AR-15, and that's when the police shot him. If he had got into that door, yeah. And that was only 30 seconds into his shooting spree that he killed however many people, 9? Yeah. And there were hundreds of people in that club.
I numbed out after California at the Garlic Festival.
Oh, yeah. Gilroy Garlic Festival.
Wow.
Yeah, so what is the point of it all? Why are people doing, why the guy in Las Vegas? What, he didn't like country music? I don't think that was it. I think it's terrorism, right? These are domestic terrorists, and they want people to be afraid, and they want people to... just to be afraid. I mean, it's what the IRA used to do in bombing pubs in London.
Things
Taliban.
are
just be afraid.
Things happen to be escalating right now on the tails of Trump, who is running for re-election, and he's doing his best to really rile people up.
Now, here's statistics, 1982 to 2012. Mass shooters' weapons. This is people who've shot 3 or 4 people or more. 143 weapons involved. 71 of them, almost half of them, were semi-automatic handguns. Assault weapons. We have to, there's a definition. We have to talk about what assault rifles really are. But anyway, high-capacity magazines, there were 42, and assault weapons, only 20 during that period, from 82 to 2012. The rest was long rifles, revolvers, and shotguns. So semi-automatic handguns, do we ban those too?
I think you're asking me what we should do with that?
The semi-automatic part of it is going a little too far. I don't know. I'm not a gun person, so I'm sure there's plenty I don't understand about loving guns.
I think we should ban a lot of weapons, but I just don't think it's politically I don't think we can do it politically, but I think that gun control should be way more complete, more serious than people are actually talking about. Semi-automatics, I don't know. Maybe revolvers are certainly a lot safer. You have to reload.
After 6 or 5 or...
Yeah.
Right. Semi-automatic handguns with, 30 rounds, 15 rounds, 30 rounds?
Old friend of mine, road rage in Florida, he got in an argument with the car next door, got out of his car, went over and shot his gun into the guy's door. It was Florida. I don't even know if he got off or he got with a very light sentence. Florida's got a stand your ground law.
Right. Oh,
open carry, stand your ground.
Open carry, stand your
I
ground.
sort of like open carry. If somebody's got a gun, I want to know who's got it.
As long as you're white.
Well, yeah, as long as you're white. And I have to say that many, many years ago, 45 years ago, I was sailing into Acapulco, and there was we anchored out in the bay, and there was an American yacht tied up to a buoy, and at 3 a.m. in comes a fishing boat, Mexican fishing boat, and they're shouting at him and saying, hey, this is our mooring buoy. He just came in and tied up to it because, what was the first thing he did? He came up with a gun. Came up on deck with a gun. And that got him arrested. I don't know what happened to him, but anyway. Yeah, that's the first thing you do. If you're out there sailing on the ocean, you should always have a gun.
Did you have any kind of weapon when you were out there?
No. Never. No.
Have you ever owned a weapon?
No. A gun? No.
I had one. I had a .22 rifle, and we used to go to target practice in the evening, and it was sponsored by the NRA. But at those days, it was just they were just almost a conservation group, really.
Yeah, it was very different.
Very different.
I've shot a .22 rifle a few times.
It's kind of fun, target shooting.
I shot a bow and arrow.
Bow and arrow, yeah, I had a bow and arrow.
Into a bale of hay.
Of course, I had the Roy Rogers pistol and holster.
Oh, no, you're going to shoot your eye out.
The cap gun. Thank you.
Really, those eyes.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I know you're out there. And thank you to our callers. This has been Let's Talk. And let me just say that KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. And we'll be back next week with another exciting topic. I don't know what it'll be yet, of course, because that all happens over the weekend. Thank you, Stephen.
Hey.
Thank you, Shelley.
Oh, a handshake. Wow.
And a kiss.
And thanks to everybody, and we'll see you next week.